Hi, it is an honor to be part of this 20th anniversary celebration of the Sounds of the Mountains Storytelling Festival. 20 years, what an accomplishment for the festival committee, the sponsors, and all of you who have supported the festival for 20 years and have helped to keep the tradition going. Well, thinking about this being the 20th anniversary of this festival made me think about other things that are having a 20th anniversary, other things that happened in the year 2001. Well, of course, that was a year when there were some major world events. But for me, there were also some personal events, some personal milestones that happened that year and that are also celebrating a 20th anniversary. And one of those milestones, one of those events became this story. Birthdays were the only holiday my mother cared anything about. The rest of the holidays, she would have happily scratched right off the calendar. Christmas was the worst, of course, with all the baking, the buying, the wrapping, the shopping. She was never sentimental about Christmas. She was not one of those people who sent out a cheery annual Christmas newsletter detailing all the fun things the family had done that year. She did not read articles about how to turn a turkey carcass into a topiary. A live tree in the living room in December just meant needles in the carpet in July, as far as she was concerned. She was never fond of Christmas. It was my dad who loved Christmas. Oh, my dad. Every year, the first week of December, he would head out to the Boy Scout Christmas tree lot and he would pick out a 9-foot spruce, strap it on top of the black and white Impala, drive it home, drag that thing into the living room like it was some kind of wild beast he'd killed in the forest. Fed up with those flimsy Christmas tree stands, you know the ones I mean, those thin metal red and green stands, totally incapable of supporting his trophy trees. So one year, my dad just finally made his own Christmas tree stand, welded it out of wrought iron. It had 14-inch long spikes and screws sticking into the center to hold the trunk straight. And there was a wrought iron bowl at the base that you were supposed to fill with wet sand to keep the tree moist. Wrought iron, wet sand. The stand alone must have weighed 200 pounds. And while there was never any danger the tree would fall over, there was some concern the living room floor might give way. My dad liked things sturdy, and he loved Christmas. But to my mother, Christmas was just a lot of work. And the other holidays were just as bad, especially the summer holidays, because on each of the 3 summer holidays, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, my dad would cart the whole family out to Mineral Spring Park for a picnic at 5 a.m. 5 in the morning. It was still dark. My dad hated crowds. He hated having to fight for a parking space. He hated having other people's noisy kids interfere with his day off. So early in his career as a dad, he came up with what seemed like a perfect plan. We would have breakfast picnics. Up before dawn, 3 sleepy kids, 1 grumpy mother, and my enthusiastic dad would pile into the black and white Chevy. Oh, or in the early days, the pea soup green Hudson Hornet with a back seat the size of Rhode Island. We'd head out to Mineral Spring Park at the edge of town, where we would be, no surprise, the only people there. My dad would start a fire in one of the grills. My mother would set a picnic table with a red and white check cloth, cups, plates. We girls would go play in the woods. And then when the fire was hot, my dad would cook breakfast. The only meal I ever saw him make. Scrambled eggs with little pieces of bacon chopped up in them and home fries. Not hash browns, home fries. Thick slices of potato fried up with onions and bacon grease. Oh, the best part, those crispy brown bits that had to be scraped from the bottom of the pan. By 9 a.m., when the early bird picnickers were arriving, we were packing up to leave. That's the way to do it, my dad would say, pleased with himself for such a sensible plan. Get the family fun requirement out of the way early enough to leave plenty of day to do something useful. Build a 400-pound TV stand maybe, or weld together a metal towel rack for the bathroom where it would leave 4 permanent circular indentations in the linoleum floor and would still be there in its original spot when they sold the house 43 years later. So picnic done, we'd come home. My dad would disappear down to the basement to start some project. We girls would go play outside. My mother would be left to clean up the mess. 2 skillets encrusted with charcoal soot and burnt on potato, a tablecloth stained with Kool-Aid and jelly smears, and 3 sets of children's play clothes with grass stains on the seats. What was not to love about holidays? The week before Thanksgiving was always the week my dad would finally get around to painting some room in the house he'd been meaning to paint for months. Oh, he'd finish the project in plenty of time, usually Tuesday of the holiday week, so that by the time all the company showed up on Thursday for Thanksgiving dinner, the house would still have that good, appetite-enhancing, fresh paint smell. You know, her entire married life, the brand name my mother most associated with Thanksgiving was not Butterball, but Sherwin-Williams. Easter meant my mother had to be the referee in the precise allocation of candy across 3 identical Easter baskets. Oh, those baskets had to be exactly alike because my sister Lisa would take her school ruler and measure the chocolate bunnies, count the jelly beans and Hershey Kisses to be sure nobody got any more than she did. Of course, Easter is when my mother got back at us girls for everything wrong we did all year. Because every year, on the Saturday before Easter, the day before Easter, she would line us up on 3 chairs in the kitchen, drape us from neck to knee in long plastic capes, and administer the dreaded Tony home permanent. Overnight, the frizz would explode into little poofs above each ear, so that the next morning, in spite of, or maybe even because of all the barrettes and hair ornaments we'd used to try to tame the frizzy poofs, we would arrive at church on Easter Sunday morning looking like a trio of French poodles in patent leather shoes. So, holidays my mother could have happily done without, but birthdays were just cake and celebration, and some years she would celebrate the whole week of a birthday, not just one day. So, as much as my mother loved birthdays, my sisters and I knew we had to do something really special for her 80th birthday when it rolled around in January 2001. So we decided we all needed to go together to Paris. Paris, my mother said when we suggested it to her. I've never been to Paris. I'd like to ride that Millennium Y2K Ferris wheel before they take it down. I don't think I'll be around for the next one. Well, that birthday trip to Paris was unforgettable in so many ways, but the most unforgettable part of it was nothing I ever imagined. It was not the way the January sunlight turned into jewels as it filtered through the stained glass windows of Notre Dame Cathedral. It was not the taste of crusty bread from a left bank boulangerie. It was not even the amazing view of the City of Lights from the top of that Millennium Y2K Ferris wheel. The most unforgettable part of that trip was a gift I got from the birthday girl. The gift of a story, a family story that was completely new to me. You know how it is. You reach some age, 35, 40, you've heard every family story, every family legend, every variation on every family story and legend. But there we were. It was the morning of Mother's birthday, and we were waiting to get into the Louvre Museum. We were standing in line outside. It was a cold, gray January morning. And Mother was talking about something. I confess I was not really listening. I was watching the traffic and the tourists. And then I realized she was telling a story I'd never heard before. It was a story about my dad and the day that he came home, not a birthday, not a holiday, just an ordinary day. And he came home and gave my mother a large pink cardboard box from Martin's, a downtown ladies' dress shop, a box that contained 2 dresses that fit her perfectly and were for her to wear when they would go out dancing together. My parents loved to go dancing. They would go out a couple of times a month. And as she talked about those dresses, I remembered them. I would have been 7, 8 years old at the time. One of the dresses was bright red taffeta with a scoop neck and cap sleeves and tiny bows on the full skirt that made a rustling sound when she'd turn. The other dress was sheer black organdy over shiny black silk. Oh, it shimmered like diamonds when she'd move. It had a wide black patent leather belt that she polished with Vaseline, and she wore it with high-heeled, open-toed, sling-back patent leather shoes. Sometimes I'd be allowed to go sit in my parents' bedroom and watch my mother get all dressed up, ready to go out dancing with my dad. I would sit there on the high bed, the chenille bedspread carving swirly patterns in the backs of my legs. I would watch my mother as she stood there at her dresser, leaned in towards the mirror to smooth out the edges of her cherries in the snow lipstick. She would tilt her head to one side to fasten the clasp of her pearl necklace, touch a dab of Chanel No. 5 inside each elbow, behind each ear, sometimes a dab for me too. Then she would slip into her dress and zip up that long zipper on the side. And then you would hear it, clickety, 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 clickety. The sound of those patent leather high-heeled shoes heading down the front stairs. My dad would be there in the living room waiting for her, holding her coat. She would slide her arms into the satin-lined sleeves, and off they would go, leaving behind a cloud of fragrance, Chanel No. 5, Aquanet hairspray, Old Spice, Listerine, and that kiwi black shoe polish that gave my dad's Sunday best shoes that hard, bright shine. So I remembered those dresses, but until that birthday trip, I never knew that my dad had bought them for her, that my dad had walked into a downtown ladies' dress shop and picked out those dresses, and they fit her perfectly, and she liked them. My dad was a tool maker. He worked at a steel prefabricating plant that made huge, one-of-a-kind industrial objects out of steel. And I'd seen his strong hands do lots of things. I'd seen his hands wield a blowtorch as he scraped the paint from the front porch steps before repainting them on a hot July Saturday afternoon. I'd seen his hands pick those hard green pears that grew wild on trees down by the train yards. I'd seen his hands put the snow chains on the tires of the black and white Chevy on a freezing cold Sunday morning before church. I'd seen his hands do those things, but I had never seen my father's hands encircled around my mother's waist or caressing her face. They were old-fashioned parents. You didn't do things like that in front of the children. But those dresses were beautiful dresses, and they fit her perfectly. And I'd never before thought about my father knowing the curve of her body and the way that red taffeta would make her eyes shine. I never knew any of that until that special birthday trip. We got into the museum. We saw breathtakingly beautiful images, paintings, sculptures, the Mona Lisa herself. But the breathtakingly beautiful image that will remain with me always from that trip is the image of a handsome young man in a brown felt fedora, handing his wife a large pink cardboard box that contained not just dresses, but an invitation to dance to music just the two of them could hear.
Thank you for watching this. A big shout out of thanks to our sponsors, and thank you for your donation to Camp Bethel and for tipping the performers. Use the donor buttons or links on this page. Thank you.
We hope the festival will be back home in person next year and need your help in getting the camp ready to reopen as soon as possible for summer camps, guest groups, and special events like the festival. Please click on the link below and make your contribution toward the work, the fun, and the fellowship that find a home at Camp Bethel. Thanks for watching, and thank you for your gift.